eye issues, back issues. So I take workshops for them, and plus the SAI workshops. And I normally used to take lectures for an organization called Exercise Science Academy. So they hold the American College of Sports Medicine courses in India for personal trainers and marathon runners and nutritionists. So I take those lectures on Zoom as well.
Okay.
Let's start then. A very good
Yes.
morning, everyone. Today we have a very important class. Today's topic is importance of recovery in training and racing, fundamentals and tool. This will be conducted by Mr. Nikhil Lathe. Mr. Nikhil Lathe is a sports scientist and physiotherapist. He is presently consulted in Sportsman Active. Previously, he was the head of sports science and rehab with Olympic Gold Quest for 7 years. Mr. Nikhil was personal physio of Mary Kom at London Olympic Games, Sania Nehwal for All England in 2015, and shooter Gangan Narang and Apurvi for 2016 Rio Olympic. We like to welcome Mr. Nikhil to start the program. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So today we are going to deal with a topic which is actually very close to my heart, and which is to do with recovery. Because in my experience, having worked with multiple elite athletes across disciplines at both national and international level, what I've found is everyone works hard, everyone is motivated, everyone wants to win. But at the end of the day, it comes down to who is fresher and fitter on the day of the competition. So if you're at 100% and your opponent is at 90% of their fitness, then you have a natural advantage. So ensuring that my athletes recover well, not just between training sessions, but on a day-to-day basis, as well as making sure that during the competition, whatever time you have between your events, that they really are able to recover well in that time, has been sort of the bench base on which my programs have been designed. So it's all been about how do you recover well? Because one thing you have to understand is, or rather everybody knows, in order to get performance, you need to train hard. That is something everyone knows. But in order to train hard, you need to recover well between two training sessions. Because if you don't do that, then you're carrying over fatigue from one day to the next, to the next, to the next, until something gives way and you end up with injuries. All right. So what I'm going to cover in today's session. So I'm going to cover fundamentals of recovery, and then I'm going to talk about how to recover during a training session, after a training session, during competition, on a day-to-day basis. So that's all going to be covered in today's session. So what are the fundamentals of recovery? What do you mean by recovery? So when you say recovery, basically it means that you have to return to fitness before the next training session. Now, full fitness is a vague term. So let's break it down system wise. So when you talk about the muscles, bones and joints, whenever you train hard, when you swim, your muscles undergo wear and tear, and that needs to be repaired. Now this wear and tear is usually microscopic damage. It's very, very tiny. Your body is well and truly capable of repairing it in a few hours. And that is what happens. Now, the speed at which the body takes care of the recovery process is age dependent. So in my experience, once an athlete crosses 25 years of age, it's literally like flipping a switch. At age 24, recovery is excellent. At age 26, the recovery has slowed down. So the older the athlete gets, you have to move away from quantity training to quality training. So you have to make sure that they are spending more time doing strength and conditioning so that their bodies are in optimum shape, and the training program has to be of a very good quality so that your not causing too much of an insult on the muscles and joints, and you're ensuring good recovery. So the muscles need to repair themselves, the bones need to repair themselves, the joints need to repair themselves. Whatever small swelling has occurred inside the muscles needs to be taken care of. When it comes to energy systems, and I believe you've just had a session on energy systems, uh, uh, the speaker then must have spoken about the different fuels that your body uses. Those fuels also need to be replenished. The muscle glycogen needs to be replenished, glycogen inside the liver needs to be replenished. So all of those need to happen. For that, your diet becomes important. I believe you have a session coming up in a few days on nutrition. So replenishing your fuel stores will be covered in greater detail then. Then let's talk about your heart and lungs. So your heart needs to sort of settle down, relax, improve its own blood supply, send the blood to the working muscles to help them recover fast. The respiratory system also needs to provide the oxygen which is required to replenish the body. So your heart and your lungs actually work for a longer time after your session is complete. So as soon as you stop your training and lungs to normal, it takes a few hours for them to return to normal because they still have to work hard to ensure that your muscles get enough blood supply, that your muscles get enough oxygen, and they recover fast. The nervous system, this has to do with the brain and nerves. Now, the brain and nerves aren't like muscles where they undergo wear and tear. But what does happen is the fuel supply to the brain and nerves can go down. So again, if you manage your diet and sleep, your nervous system will recover. Sleep is by far the most important way in which your body recovers. We'll come to that. So the ultimate aim of recovery is to ensure that you can train hard and improve performance. The harder you train, the better the performance. But in order to train hard, the body needs to well. Okay. So we are going to look at different areas of recovery, which is during training. We are going to look at how post-training recovery works. We are going to look at recovering from one day to the next during competition. The various tools and equipments that are out there to help in recovery. I'll tell you the pros and cons of these different equipments so that you can make better informed decisions whether you want to invest in them or suggest them to your athletes. And lastly, just on the last slide, I'm just going to talk about how good recovery avoids injuries. All right. So what about recovery during training? Okay. So during training, there are three things that you need to watch out for. And post training, there are three things that need to happen. So let's talk about during training. So first is lactate measurements. Now in your session on energy systems, I'm sure the speaker covered how body generates lactic acid and how it's thrown out of the muscle into the bloodstream. And you can measure it in the bloodstream, just like you use strips to measure blood sugar levels for people who are diabetics to know whether their diabetes is under control or it's just spreading, and what the blood sugar levels are from a R to R basis or a 6R to 6R basis. Similarly, you can use similar equipment like a small meter and strips to measure the lactate. So understanding your blood lactate levels will help you understand how hard the muscles are working. And with regular measurements, you can actually understand if you're pushing the athlete too hard or not. However, with lactate, the problem is that it builds up in the body with exercise. So it takes a little bit of time. So when you do a 100-meter sprint, and as soon as the sprint is over, if the swimmer puts his hand out of the pool and you take a sample, you may not see the blood lactate, you may not see the lactate levels produced by the muscle. The reason is once the lactate is produced in the muscle, it has to be kicked out into blood. That blood has to travel to your fingertip or your earlobe, where as a coach or a sports scientist, you will sample it. Now, this process takes time. So when you check lactate, it builds up in the body with exercise, and there is a lag between when the muscle generates the lactate to when you sample it in your sample it to understand how hard the athlete has worked. The second is longer session gets longer, the body produces more and more lactate, and therefore it becomes a little hard to understand whether this lactate is because of a certain sprint or it's built up over time. As in, if you do a 1 hour training session and you check the lactate at the end of the hour, you don't know whether it was because of the heavy sprinting done in the last 10 minutes or because of the entire training session. So it's not accurate enough to understand whether the athlete is pushing himself or herself in a particular set. But if you are regular with the lactate assessment, like taking regular lactate measurements from the fingertip or the earlobe, you can accurately track exercise intensity and the body's response to training. However, it is quite expensive. So unless you have the resources, testing lactate can be pretty expensive. I mean, the device itself costs somewhere around 60 to 75,000, and the strips, they need to be imported, so they are also pretty expensive. So unless you have the resources, testing with lactate measurements can be a bit expensive. But luckily, there are more inexpensive ways to track how much you're pushing the body and whether the body is recovering well or not during training, using heart rate and using rate of perceived exertion. Now, heart rate is something everyone understands. It's basically how many times your heart is beating in a minute. And as you exercise, it goes up. As soon as you stop exercise, it comes down. So the heart rate measurements are extremely specific to the set that was done prior to checking. So you can check how hard you push. What you don't understand with heart rate is how did your body respond to that stress. So yes, the heart rate went up, but how check that? You can check with lactate, but that's expensive. So the other way to understand how your body responds to the exercise, so heart rate tells you how hard the body is working when it comes to the cardiovascular system, but for the muscular system you can use the rate of perceived exertion. Okay, now what is rate of perceived exertion? Rate of perceived exertion is basically a way to quantify. So say for example, everyone who's listening, I ask you to run 5 kilometers tomorrow, or because it's swimming, let's say I ask you to swim 1600 meters in the pool whenever the pool's open, and you swim at your own pace or you swim at a particular pace, and at the end of it I ask you, how do you feel? So you might say it was very light, or you might say it was somewhat hard. And basically what I want to know is, how did you feel when you exercised? Okay, so I don't care whether you felt it was 1 on 10 or 5 on 10 or 8 on 10. I want to know how you felt. So basically, if you ask her, how did he or she feel? And if the swimmer is not scared of telling you how they actually felt, and they are aware of how they actually felt, then this becomes an extremely, extremely sensitive way to track how the body is responding to exercise. So as you can see, this is color coded. You have your green zones, which is very easy exercise, which is at around 60-70% of your heart rate. Where you have your yellow zones, which are moderate exercise, moderate to hard exercise, which is around 80 to 90% of your heart rate. And then you have very hard or hard zones, which is almost close to maximum. So don't go by the numbers when you do RPE. When you do rate of perceived exertion, or you want to understand how the body dealt with a particular set, forget the numbers and ask them how they felt. If the athlete can describe how they felt, you have a fair idea of not just the heart rate, but also how hard the body pushed itself in order to meet your training goal. All right. So during training, if you can track the lactate, you know how much rest pause needs to be given to allow the lactate to come down. If you track the heart rate, you know how long a rest pause needs to be given to allow the heart rate to come down. If you track rate of perceived exertion, you can track how well the body is responding to the rest pause, and you know how long the rest pause can be given to make the body relax. So it is important that you check either lactate or heart rate or RPE, at least one of these three, to ensure that you're not overtraining, that you're giving adequate rest pause between two sets, which allows the body to recover, which allows the body, which allows the body to get rid of the swelling that is developing inside the muscle, which allows the body to get rid of the lactic acid that is developed inside. Body is better prepared for the next set. So allowing a good rest pause, not too much, not too little, between two sets helps in recovery during the training session. And how much rest pause you can decide based on your rate of perceived exertion, which in he or she trains and takes a rest pause. You can do it on the basis of heart rate, or you can do it on the basis of lactate measurements. Lactate measurements is the most expensive way of doing it. Rate of perceived exertion is the cheapest way of doing it. And both of all three are extremely good at tracking the body's response to exercise. Now, this is what happens during training. Okay, these three measurements help you in understanding how much rest pause is required. But what about after training? What can you do to ensure that the athlete recovers well from, say, the morning session to the evening session? So once the morning session is done, you need to cool down properly. Once after cooling down, you may want to do some icing. Say, for example, if a athlete is feeling increased strain on the shoulder, then he or she may want to do some icing to just help relax that area and cool it down properly and reduce the metabolism of that area. But you would definitely have to do stretching. So after training, a good cool down inside the pool and some stretching outside the pool is absolutely necessary. If there is ice available, then some icing for the important parts like the shoulders and the knees should be done. Okay. Now, how do you recover? What to do during training session, how to decide how much rest pause needs to be given. We saw after training session what needs to be done, which is cool down and stretching and icing. But how do you ensure that there still isn't any fatigue that builds up from Monday to Tuesday, Tuesday to Wednesday, Wednesday to Thursday, and over a period of 4 weeks or 6 months, the athlete starts complaining of something? I'll give you an example why this day-to-day recovery is important. Okay, it's to do with amateur athletes, so bear with me, but the example does illustrate a point. So I had a patient come to me. He has been running for the last 10 years, a half marathon distance, and he runs the same distance in the same time and trains the same way. So there is no increase in load or decrease in load that happens with him. He's been doing the same thing for the last 10 years. 9 years, he had no problems. But this year, the 10th year, he started getting pain in his. Could it be because of running? Nothing has changed. His shoes, his running style, his training intensity, load, everything has been the same. So it is unlikely that running was the cause of his pain. So then I asked him, what has changed in your life in the last 6 months? And he answered to me that he became a partner in his firm, and therefore stress levels increased and the amount of sleep he got went down from 6.5 hours every night to around 5 hours to 5 hours 10 15 minutes. So he started racking up a sleep deficit every single day for many months, and after about 4 to 6 months his muscles gave up and they started paining. Okay, so But this was because from one day to the next, because he wasn't getting enough sleep, his body was not recovering and fatigue was getting carried over. So how do you stop that from happening? So these 7 things on your screen are the key to recovering well from one day to the next. Number one is your water intake. Now, most elite athletes are extremely conscious of their water intake and they do a very good job. I've noticed it myself. But most of the athletes are not elite athletes. They are a level below or a few levels below. So, what the brain tells you is you're in water, you don't need more water. But what the body does is because when you're swimming, your body heats up, it still sweats. So you actually end up sweating a lot inside the pool. And if you're not careful with your water intake, you end up with a little bit of dehydration. And nothing hurts your muscles and your body's recovery like dehydration. So you have to make sure that your water intake is high. You have to make sure that you are able to okay, one basic rule of thumb that I would like to tell you, it differs from person to person, is that when you go to the washroom, the color of your pee, the color of your urine has to be light. If it gets dark yellow, then you are dehydrated. So one thing you can tell all your athletes is drink plenty of water. Your kidneys are well and truly capable of throwing out more than 20 liters in a day. Okay. So you won't overhydrate, but don't dehydrate yourself, please. The second, which I mentioned, is by far the most important thing when it comes to recovery is sleep. Because your body recovers the best when you sleep. When you're awake, something is still moving around, your brain is still working, but when you sleep and your body is at complete rest, your recovery happens the fastest. So how much sleep is necessary? Well, that depends on how hard you're working. So for coaches, for support staff who are not actively training, you need 7 hours of sleep a night minimum or 50 hours a week. But for athletes who are training hard, it has to be minimum of 8 hours. If they are training really hard, like Olympic level athletes, then it has to be almost 9 to 10 hours of sleep every day. I would ideally prefer most of that sleep coming in a single stretch at night. But if the training is such that you can't get entire 9 to 10 hours of sleep at night, I'm okay if you sleep 8 hours at night and a couple of hours between training sessions. And this is for high performance athletes. For coaches and support staff, 7 hours. For normal athletes or athletes who are not at the elite level, around 8 to 8.5 hours. For elite level athletes, minimum 9 hours of sleep is required. To give you an example, when I went with Mary for the London Games, we were pushing her so hard that she required 12 hours of sleep to recover from it. So she slept 10 hours at night and 2 hours in the afternoon. Anyway, third point is protein intake. Again, in your session on nutrition, this will be covered in much greater detail. All I would like to say is that your muscles are made up of protein. And if you don't have enough protein in your diet, your recovery slows down because you can't build a wall without bricks. So if you don't have protein available, your muscles won't repair themselves as quickly as you want them to. And the rule of thumb is about 1 gram per kg body weight for normal, but for athletes, the requirements go up significantly. And since I'm not a nutritionist, I won't do a deep dive into protein intake. I'll leave that for your next session on nutrition. The fourth point is vitamin D. Now, vitamin D is a vitamin that your body generates when it is to sunlight. Now, you may think that swimmers are in their swimming costumes in the open, inside the swimming pool, so they must be getting enough vitamin D. However, in my experience, that is not the case. Whenever I've got blood tests done for athletes, for swimmers especially, their vitamin D levels have always come out low. Vitamin D is extremely essential for muscle health and bone health. I've had 2 instances where elite athletes that I've worked with, because of vitamin D deficiency, ended up with stress fractures. One of them was a race walker. He ended up with a stress fracture and couldn't recover in time to qualify for Rio. The other was a badminton player who ended up with a stress fracture but recovered in time to win a silver medal in Rio. But vitamin D has been one of the issues that I've found plagues Indian athletes across all sports, across all disciplines, across the length and breadth of the country. So I definitely suggest that these two vitamins which you have on your screen, vitamin D and B12, a blood test needs to be done to check their levels at least once a year. Because if D goes down, your muscle recovery and your bone strength goes down. If B12 goes down, then the health of your nerves goes down and something that shouldn't pain starts hurting. All right. So these 5 things: water, sleep, protein, adequate amounts of protein intake, vitamin D levels, and vitamin B12 levels help your body recover well from day to day. There are 2 more things which aid in recovery, which is regular stretching and regular strengthening. What they do is they improve the ability of your body to take load increases, then the wear and tear on the muscles goes down, and therefore the amount of repair work that is needed reduces, and you end up recovering fast. So the first 5 things are crucial to helping your body recover, and the last 2 things are crucial for your body to get injured to a lesser extent. So when you have these 7 things in place, you should expect that most of the unnecessary aches, pains, and niggles tend to go down by a lot, by more than 80%. Okay. Now, once we have done recovery during training, post training, and on a day-to-day basis, let's talk about how to recover during competition.
Nikhil,
Now,
can I come in for a second?
yes, sir.
We've not had the luxury of having somebody also be able to speak in Hindi with the foreign experts. Can you use a bit of Hindi? Because
Sure, sir. I'll just go
we
back a
have
few
some
slides and
requests.
repeat myself. I'll do that.
You
Sir.
need not to kind of repeat everything exactly, but you can
I'll just
slide over it in Hindi.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Sorry about that.
No problem, sir. Okay. So जब हम रिकवरी की बात करते हैं, हम एक्चुअली कहना चाहते हैं कि एक ट्रेनिंग सेशन से अगले ट्रेनिंग सेशन तक बॉडी पूरी तरह से पहले जैसी होनी चाहिए. So जब हम पहले जैसी होनी चाहिए कहते हैं, ये थोड़ा सा वेग टर्म है. तो लेट्स गो पॉइंट वाइज कि आपकी हड्डियां और आपके जो मसल्स है उनको पहले जैसा होने के लिए जो कुछ डैमेज हुआ है ट्रेनिंग के टाइम मसल वर्क करने की वजह से उनमें थोड़ी सी इंजरी हो जाती है, वो ठीक होनी चाहिए. जो बॉडी का ईंधन है, जो ग्लूकोज की रिक्वायरमेंट है, प्रोटीन और फैट की रिक्वायरमेंट है, वो वापस आपको लेना है डाइट से. एंड फाइनली जो आपका हार्ट और लंग्स है उनको थोड़ा एक्स्ट्रा काम करना पड़ता है ट्रेनिंग सेशन के बाद, ताकि जो कुछ डैमेज हुआ है हड्डियों को और मसल्स को वो वापस रिकवर हो जाए. तो इस सब के लिए थोड़ा सा रेस्ट लेना ट्रेनिंग सेशन के बाद बहुत जरूरी है. एंड फाइनली जो नर्वस सिस्टम है आपका, जो ब्रेन एंड नर्व्स है, उसको सिर्फ ईंधन की जरूरत पड़ती है, उसको रेस्ट की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती. तो उसके लिए ठीक से खाना खाना जरूरी है. तो आपका एक सेशन ऑलरेडी हो चुका है जिसमें आपका बॉडी कौन सा ईंधन यूज करता है और कैसे यूज करता है, उसमें ऑलरेडी एक सेशन हो चुका है. और जो आप खाना खाते हो तो उसमें क्या क्या होना चाहिए, किस वक्त क्या खाना चाहिए, उसका एक सेशन आपका अभी बाकी है. तो ये 2 चीजों पे मैं बात नहीं करूंगा. मैं बस एज अ कोच आप क्या क्या कर सकते हो ताकि आपका जो एथलीट है वो एक दिन से दूसरे दिन तक, एक ट्रेनिंग सेशन से दूसरे ट्रेनिंग सेशन तक ठीक तरह से रिकवर कर सके, ताकि जो बॉडी की थकान है वो एक सेशन से दूसरे सेशन तक ना जाए. वरना फिर पहला ट्रेनिंग सेशन बच्चे ने 100% पे किया, दूसरे सेशन में बॉडी जो कि थकी हुई है वो सिर्फ 95% दे पाया, और अब उसके बाद वाले सेशन तक वो और थक चुका है तो सिर्फ 90% दे पाया. तो उससे क्या होता है, आपका ट्रेनिंग सेशन का क्वालिटी कम हो जाता है, और क्योंकि अच्छा ट्रेनिंग नहीं हो रहा है परफॉर्मेंस कम हो जाता है। सो ट्रेनिंग के वक्त आप क्या कर सकते हो? ट्रेनिंग के वक्त आप उनका ब्लड लैक्टेट मेजर कर सकते हो, या फिर उनका हार्ट रेट मेजर कर सकते हो, या फिर आप उनसे सिर्फ पूछ सकते हो कि आपको कैसे फील हो रहा है, कि ट्रेनिंग करते वक्त आपको क्या महसूस होता है, रेस्ट करते वक्त आपको क्या महसूस होता है। जब आप लैक्टेट मेजरमेंट करते हो या हार्ट रेट मेजरमेंट करते हो, आपको पता चलेगा कि आपने बॉडी को कितना पुश किया। और जब आप उनको पूछते हो कि कैसे फील हो रहा है, तो आपको ये भी पता चलेगा कि रेस्ट पॉज में इसके बीच में 2 सेट्स के बीच में आपका बॉडी कितना जल्दी रिकवर कर रहा है। ओके, ये 2 चीजें आप पूछ सकते हो। और ट्रेनिंग के बाद रिकवरी थोड़ा इम्प्रूव करने के लिए एक ट्रेनिंग सेशन से दूसरे ट्रेनिंग सेशन के लिए पूल के अंदर कूल डाउन होना चाहिए, पूल के बाहर हल्का सा कूल डाउन और स्ट्रेचिंग होना चाहिए। और अगर बर्फ अवेलेबल है तो जो मेजर जॉइंट्स है, जैसे शोल्डर है, नीज है, बैक है, इस पे आप एक 10 मिनट आइसिंग भी कर सकते हो। तो इससे क्या होगा, बॉडी जल्दी रिकवर करेगा, जो कुछ स्वेलिंग आया है, थकान आई है, वो जल्दी निकल जाएगी और हर ट्रेनिंग सेशन में बच्चा 100% दे पाएगा। और ड्यूरिंग ट्रेनिंग सेशन आप और 2 सेट्स के बीच में गैप जितना चाहिए उतना दे रहे हो, ये चेक करने के लिए आप उनका हार्ट रेट, दिल की धड़कन और उनका परसीव्ड एक्सर्शन, लाइक उनको कितनी थकान महसूस हो रही है, ये आप पूछ सकते हो। एक नोट कीजिए कि लैक्टेट मेजरमेंट काफी एक्सपेंसिव है और काफी एक्यूरेट है कि आप एग्जैक्टली कितना आपने एथलीट को पुश किया ये आप चेक कर सकते हो, लेकिन काफी एक्सपेंसिव है। लेकिन जो हार्ट रेट मेजरमेंट या उनको कैसे फील हो रहा है एक्सरसाइज करते वक्त, ये 2 चीजें सस्ती है, चीप है, इसमें ज्यादा मेहनत नहीं करनी पड़ती एंड इट इज स्टिल फेयरली एक्यूरेट। मतलब आप काफी अच्छी तरह से अपना ट्रेनिंग सेशन मैनेज कर सकते हो। जब आप एक दिन से दूसरे दिन की रिकवरी की बात करते हो, तो मेक श्योर कि बच्चा पहले दिन 100% देता है, अगले दिन 90%, अगले दिन 80%। ऐसा ना हो, एक दिन से दूसरे दिन तक बॉडी जल्दी रिकवर करे। इसके लिए आपको ये 7 चीजों पे ध्यान देना है। नंबर 1, पानी ढेर सारा पीना है। नंबर 2, कम से कम 8 से 9 घंटा नींद होनी चाहिए एथलीट्स की। प्रोटीन इंटेक नहीं हूँ तो मैं एग्जैक्टली कितना प्रोटीन किस समय देना चाहिए उसके बारे में मैं आज बात नहीं करूंगा। जब आपका न्यूट्रिशन का सेशन होगा तब ये चीजें आपको ज्यादा बेहतर तरीके से समझाई जाएंगी। विटामिन डी ये आपको धूप से मिलता है, लेकिन अनफॉर्चुनेटली स्विमर्स में भी जो सिर्फ स्विमिंग कॉस्ट्यूम में धूप में स्विमिंग करते हैं, उनमें भी मुझे विटामिन डी की मात्रा काफी कम पाई गई है। तो सालाना एक ब्लड टेस्ट करने से आपको पता चलेगा कि विटामिन डी लेवल आपके बच्चे में कितना है और जरूरत पड़े तो दवाइयाँ ले सकते हैं। विटामिन डी कम होने की वजह से हड्डियां कमजोर हो जाती है और मसल्स सूजन रहती है, जो डैमेज हो जाता है मसल को वो बने रहता है। सेम थिंग विद विटामिन B12। विटामिन B12 आपकी नसों के लिए बहुत जरूरी है, आपके नर्व्स के लिए। तो अगर विटामिन B12 की मात्रा कम हो जाती है तो आपकी जो नसें हैं वो बहुत सेंसिटिव हो जाती हैं और जहाँ दर्द नहीं होना चाहिए वहाँ भी दर्द फील होता है। तो अगर ये 5 चीजें सही है तो आपका बॉडी जल्दी रिकवर कर जाता है, जो डैमेज हुआ है ट्रेनिंग की वजह से वो जल्दी रिकवर हो जाता है। और ये जो लास्ट स्ट्रेंथनिंग, जिससे आपका बॉडी फ्लेक्सिबल रहेगा और मजबूत रहेगा, उससे बॉडी को डैमेज कम होगा और अगर डैमेज कम हो रहा है तो रिकवरी भी जल्दी हो जाती है। तो ये 7 चीजों पे हमें ध्यान देना है। नाउ द नेक्स्ट थिंग इज कि अब कंपटीशन के वक्त आप क्या कर सकते हो, व्हाट कैन यू डू ड्यूरिंग competition. So during competitions there are 4-5 things that are extremely important. एक तो होता है warm up. So you need to warm up very well. So say for example अगर 10 बजे आपका competition है, if the competition is at 10 o'clock, you need to reach the venue at least by 9 o'clock. At least 1 घंटा पहले आपको training competition पे पहुंचना है ताकि आप खुद की तैयारी करके वार्म अप करके आप रेडी हो सको। मिनिमम 1 घंटा, 1.5 घंटा पहले पहुंचो तो इट्स बेटर। इफ यू रीच 1.5 hour बिफोर, दैट इज इवन बेटर। फिर कंपटीशन होने के बाद, आपका इवेंट होने के बाद कूल डाउन वापस जरूरी है। अगेन पूल के अंदर कूल डाउन और पूल के बाहर स्ट्रेचिंग, ये बहुत जरूरी है। इससे आपका बॉडी थोड़ा रिकवर कर लेता है बिटवीन सेट्स। सो इफ यू वार्म अप वेल, if you cool down well inside the pool and you stretch outside the pool, your body gets ready for the next event better. Very important during competition is eating. अब खाना कौन सा खाना है, क्या खाना है, किस वक्त खाना है, what to eat, when to eat, how to eat is by far the most important part in a competition, because एक इवेंट से दूसरे इवेंट के बीच जो गैप होता है वो समझ के आपको खाना है. So for example, if the gap between two events is 4 hours, then you can have something which is filling, जैसे lunch, immediately after your first event, and then sleep or rest so that it digests well before your next event. लेकिन अगर दो इवेंट्स के बीच में सिर्फ 1 घंटा या 1.5 घंटे का गैप है तो आप हैवी कुछ खा नहीं सकते. यू कांट हैव अ लंच और समथिंग हैवी. तो आपको स्नैक्स लेना है विच आर लाइट एंड इजी टू डाइजेस्ट, ताकि पहले 10-15 मिनट में स्नैक हो जाए तो फिर भी आपको एक 45 मिनट्स मिलते हैं फॉर इट टू डाइजेस्ट बिफोर यू हैव टू स्टार्ट वार्मिंग अप अगेन. So eating during competition is extremely important, and it is based on the duration between two events and how much time you get between them. What you have available. I'll allow the nutritionist who is going to speak later on to handle it better, since I'm not the expert. लेकिन ये 4-5 चीजें हैं जो आपको ध्यान देना है. सही वार्म अप, कूल डाउन इनसाइड द पूल, stretching outside the pool, khana, food, eating, and then sleeping or resting. And as you all know, and I'm also of the same opinion, lying down with your mobile phone is not sleeping and not resting. If you want to rest, the mobile phone should be placed away from you and you should lie down with your eyes closed. Bhale neend na aaye, even if you don't sleep, lie down with your eyes closed. That is the best way to rest and recover. Okay, so these are the things you need to do during competition to ensure कि एक सेशन, एक कंपटीशन से अगले कंपटीशन तक, एक इवेंट से दूसरे इवेंट तक बॉडी जितना हो सके उतना रिकवर कर पाए. गुड वार्म अप, गुड कूल डाउन, गुड स्ट्रेचिंग, प्रॉपर ईटिंग, एडिक्वेट रेस्ट, या फिर जितना रेस्ट मिल सके उतना. ओके, सो दीज आर द थिंग्स यू नीड टू पे अटेंशन टू. नाउ नेक्स्ट वी टॉक अबाउट टूल्स टू एड रिकवरी. कि अगर आपकी एकेडमी में या आपके पूल में या आपके फेडरेशन में अवेलेबिलिटी है टू इन्वेस्ट इन सम इक्विपमेंट टू हेल्प योर एथलीट्स रिकवर, तो उसमें एकदम सस्ते से एक्सपेंसिव तक रेंज अवेलेबल है. सो लेट्स हैव अ लुक एट इट वन बाय वन. So first thing that most athletes do is icing, बर्फ का सेक, to recover. Now there are two theories कि बर्फ का सेक से recovery इतनी अच्छी actually होती नहीं, गरम लेना चाहिए. Few specific areas where that works. I'll come to that. So icing के लिए there are a cryo chamber like this. ये काफी expensive होता है. This is quite expensive. इसमें your body is hit with cold air at -100 degrees Celsius, और उसको cool down करने के लिए liquid nitrogen का use होता है. So it is very expensive, but it works really really well. The cheapest way is an ice bath. कि एक टब में आपने बर्फ डाल दिया और पानी डाल दिया और वो एकदम बर्फीले ठंडे पानी में आप बैठ जाओ for about 30 seconds, come out, बॉडी को वाइप ऑफ कर दो टॉवेल से, वापस अंदर बैठो फॉर 30 सेकंड्स, वापस कम आउट, वाइप योरसेल्फ ऑफ, अगेन गो इन फॉर 30 सेकंड्स. ऐसे 4 या 5 बार आप करो, काफी उससे रिलीफ मिलता है. और लास्ट थिंग इज यू कैन यूज कोल्ड रैप्स, जैसे कि इस फोटो में है. इनको आपको फ्रिज में रखना पड़ता है, फ्रीजर सेक्शन में, ताकि वो बर्फ इतने ठंडे हो जाए. एंड देन आप जिस एरिया पे लगाना चाहो या पूरी बॉडी पे लगाना चाहो आप यूज कर सकते हो. ये सबसे एक्सपेंसिव है, ये सबसे चीप है, और ये इन बिटवीन है. तो आइसिंग इज समथिंग यू कैन थिंक अबाउट. और एल्स इवन मोर चीपर इज कि आप फैक्ट्री से आइस खरीदो और तौलिए में लेके जहां दर्द हो रहा है वहां पे आप मसाज कर दो. सो आइसिंग इज अ वेरी गुड टूल टू एड इन रिकवरी. सेकेंड थिंग इज कंप्रेशन डिवाइसेस, जैसे इस फोटो में आपको दिख रहा है, तो ये भी एक स्विमर है, इन्होंने अपने पैरों पे ये पहना है। इसमें हवा भरने की वजह से पैरों को अच्छी तरह से स्क्वीज मिलता है, द फीट गेट कंप्रेस्ड, और जो स्वेलिंग है मसल्स में, लैक्टिक एसिड है मसल्स में, सब बाहर निकल जाता है। नाउ जब आपको स्वेलिंग या कुछ घटाना है तो आपको उसको दिल की तरफ पुश करना होता है। Okay, that's the only way the swelling can be rid of. You have to push it to the heart. So ये जो compression devices है, ये वही काम करते हैं, पैरों की तरफ से दिल की तरफ squeeze करते हैं पैरों को, so that the swelling and the waste products like lactic acid and all are squeezed out. इसकी जगह आप मसाज भी ले सकते हो, विल कम टू दैट ऑन द नेक्स्ट स्लाइड। लेकिन ये कंप्रेशन डिवाइसेस है, देयर आर क्वाइट अ फ्यू कंपनीज दैट मैन्युफैक्चर इट, जैसे ऑलटेक रिकवरी का एयर बूट्स हुआ या फिर रिकवरी पंप हुआ, देयर आर सो मेनी, लेकिन ये भी एक्सपेंसिव डिवाइसेस है। दिस इज एक्सपेंसिव, दीज आर कंपैरेटिवली चीपर, लेकिन नॉर्मलाइजिंग इज द चीपेस्ट दैट यू कैन डू। देयर आर इलेक्ट्रिकल सिस्टम also बार पाए जाते हैं जिससे इंडिविजुअल मसल्स को रिलैक्स करने के लिए उनमें से इलेक्ट्रिक करंट पास किया जाता है। So those are also some of the tools that are available to relax particular muscles. There are other things also like percussion devices. आपने शायद सुना होगा थेरागन या फिर वोल्ट प्रो या फिर हाइपर वोल्ट या ऐसे सारे डिवाइसेस है, जिसमें जो डिवाइस होता है वो लिटरली मुक्के मारता है आपके मसल पे। इट्स लाइक समबडी हिटिंग योर मसल्स विद देयर फिस्ट। तो उसकी वजह से मसल रिलैक्स हो जाता है, कूल डाउन हो जाता है, एंड इट हेल्प्स इन रिकवरी। लेकिन द अमाउंट ऑफ रिकवरी यू गेट इज नॉट एज ग्रेट एज आइसिंग, बट एट द सेम टाइम इसके लिए परकशन डिवाइसेस एथलीट खुद यूज कर सकता है, उसके लिए सुपरविजन की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती या कोई फिजियोथेरेपिस्ट की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती या बाहर से कुछ और चीज जैसे बर्फ वगैरह खरीदने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती। ये डिवाइस एथलीट खुद यूज कर सकता है, ये इस फायदा है। मसाज इज समथिंग वी आर ऑल फेमिलियर विद। मसाज का बहुत फायदा होता है इन रिकवरी। आई डेफिनेटली रिकमेंड नॉन एलीट एथलीट्स टू गेट अ मसाज डन once in 15 massage is necessary. और जो डीप टिश्यू मसाज या स्पोर्ट्स मसाज होता है या फिर स्वीडिश मसाज या स्पा टाइप मसाज होता है, आई एम इन फेवर ऑफ स्पा टाइप मसाजेस, क्योंकि जो डीप टिश्यू मसाज होता है उसकी वजह से अगले दिन सोरनेस बहुत ज्यादा हो जाती है बॉडी में, काफी पेन हो जाता है मसल्स में, और अगले दिन का ट्रेनिंग काफी हैम्पर हो जाता है। सो अगर संडे को छुट्टी है तो आप सैटरडे को डीप टिश्यू मसाज ले सकते हो, लेकिन अगर मंडे को ट्रेनिंग है तो संडे को आप स्वीडिश मसाज लीजिए ताकि बॉडी रिलैक्स हो जाए, लेकिन अगले दिन ट्रेनिंग आप सही तरीके से कर सको। फोम रोलिंग इज अगेन समथिंग आपके एथलीट्स खुद कर सकते हैं। ये फोम रोल एथलीट ने खरीद लिया या आपने वहां पे रखा, एथलीट खुद से अपने लेग्स, अपने बटक्स, अपने शोल्डर्स के लिए खुद से सेल्फ मसाज कर सकता है विद अ फोम रोल, जो काफी फायदेमंद होता है। एंड द लास्ट इज स्टीम, सोना या हॉट पैक्स। सो जब आप आइसिंग करते हो, अगर आइसिंग का टाइम आप 15 मिनट से ज्यादा रखते हो, 10 से 15 मिनट आइडियल है, अगर 15 मिनट से ज्यादा आप आइसिंग करते हो तो इट एक्चुअली स्लोज डाउन रिकवरी। ओके, सो इसलिए काफी बार कहा जाता है कि आइसिंग की जगह आप हीट कीजिए, बट व्हाट आई हैव फाउंड वर्क्स बेस्ट इज 10 मिनट आइसिंग इमीडिएटली आफ्टर ट्रेनिंग, और शाम को या फिर थोड़ा बॉडी रेस्ट करने के बाद हीट। आई फाउंड दैट वर्क्स बेस्ट। तो आइसिंग की वजह से पेन रिलीफ होता है, स्वेलिंग थोड़ा कम हो जाता है, और हॉट पैक्स या स्टीम या सोना की वजह से उस एरिया का ब्लड सप्लाई बढ़ जाता है, जिसकी वजह से वो रिकवर होता है जल्दी। सो इन माय एक्सपीरियंस आई फाउंड अ कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ हॉट एंड कोल्ड वर्क्स बेस्ट। सो कोल्ड इमीडिएटली आफ्टर ट्रेनिंग, हॉट वंस यू आर फुली रेस्टेड, आप नहा धो के सो के पूरा रिलैक्स हो गए, फिर उसके बाद hot pack, steam and sauna work best. Massage and foam rolling athletes can do during their warm up and cool down on their own. Foam rolling, not the massage. Percussion devices they can do in their cool down, again to relax particular muscles. ये full body के लिए नहीं है, and compression devices और electrical systems are expensive. Supervision की ज़रूरत पड़ती है, physiotherapist की ज़रूरत पड़ती है. तो आपके पास अगर personnel है, लोग हैं ये use करने के लिए, तो you can use this. But yeah, so these are the various tools that can help in recovery. Now, before I finish, I want to talk a little bit about how recovery plays a part in control of injuries. Now, this is a beautiful video on YouTube. आप अगर load versus capacity YouTube पे search करते हो, आपको ये पूरा video मिल जाएगा. I would suggest कि all the 688 people who are listening, please have a look at the entire video. YouTube पे जाके load versus capacity का पूरा video आप जरूर देख लीजिए, बहुत बढ़िया है. I'll just explain to you right now how recovery helps in injuries. Now, for most injuries, it's about load versus capacity कि आप body को कितना push कर रहे हो और body उस load को कैसे सहन कर पाती है. अगर load suddenly बढ़ जाता है तो body उसको catch नहीं कर सकती और injuries हो जाता है. लेकिन load अगर धीरे धीरे बढ़ता है तो बॉडी उसको कैच कर लेती है और बॉडी का कैपेसिटी और परफॉर्मेंस इंप्रूव होता है. नाउ सडनली अगर आप ट्रेनिंग लोड बढ़ाते हो, जैसे अभी लॉकडाउन पीरियड है, लॉकडाउन पीरियड के बाद बिना टेस्ट किए बिना समझे कितना लोड बॉडी ले सकता है, आप सडनली लोड बढ़ाते हो. जैसे इस बंदे के पैर पे ईंट गिर गई, लोड सडनली बढ़ गया, बॉडी को एडजस्ट करने के लिए टाइम नहीं मिला और इंजरी हो गई. बट ऑन द अदर हैंड, अगर एकदम सडन लोड नहीं बढ़ाते लेकिन कैपेसिटी से ज्यादा लोड बढ़ाते हो, जैसे ये बंदी अभी बर्पीज कर रही है, लोड इज मोर देन कैपेसिटी, तो आफ्टर अ पॉइंट बिकॉज बॉडी थक जाता है, कैपेसिटी एक्चुअली कम होने लगती है एंड यू एंड अप विद सोरनेस एंड ओवरयूज टाइप ऑफ इंजरीज. ओके, तो ये इंजरी हुई है बिकॉज ऑफ ओवरयूज, क्योंकि लोड कैपेसिटी से ज्यादा था. नाउ अगर आप लोड और कैपेसिटी को सही तरीके से मैच करते हो तो आइडियली इंजरीज नहीं होना चाहिए. लेकिन जो रिकवरी के पैरामीटर्स हमने देखे, जैसे स्लीप है या फिर कोई इलनेस है या फिर एथलीट का खुद का एटीट्यूड है कि वो खुद को जितना कोच ने कहा उससे ज्यादा पुश करने की कोशिश करता है या खुद पे स्ट्रेस ज्यादा डालता है, इन सब चीजों की वजह से despite the coach's best efforts, the capacity can be less than load and it can lead to injuries. So, अब जब आप किसी फिजियो के पास जाते हो इंजरी के बाद, तब यूजुअली जब हम असेसमेंट करते हैं एज फिजियोथेरेपिस्ट, कुछ ना कुछ तो मिल ही जाता है. जैसे आपका पैर फ्लैट है या फिर एक पैर की लंबाई दूसरे पैर से कम है, आपका बॉडी स्ट्रक्चर अलग है या आप बराबर मूवमेंट नहीं कर रहे, या फिर आपका नीज बराबर मूव नहीं कर रहा है, सम और दी अदर. बट बिलीव मी, इट कम्स डाउन टू लोड वर्सेस कैपेसिटी. सो अगर आपका रिकवरी सही है और एज अ कोच यू आर एबल टू मैनेज कि आप अपने एथलीट को कितना पुश कर रहे हो, आप ये ख्याल रखते हो कि जब कोई इंजरी दिखना स्टार्ट हो जाता है आप तुरंत उस पर ध्यान देते हो, उसको बढ़ने नहीं देते, तो ऑटोमेटिकली आप लोड और कैपेसिटी को मैनेज कर रहे हो, इंजरीज रुक जाती है, रिकवरी इंप्रूव हो जाती है एंड ट्रेनिंग कैन बी हार्डर एंड परफॉर्मेंस कैन बी बेटर. ऑलवेज रिमेंबर, इंजरी की वजह से यू एंड अप बी गोइंग 2 steps बैक. तो अगर आप इंजरी को प्रिवेंट करते हो, रिकवरी पे ध्यान देते हो, लोड को मैनेज करते हो, यू कैन ट्रेन द पर्सन क्वाइट हार्ड एंड व्हेन द ट्रेनिंग इज हार्ड द परफॉर्मेंस विल definitely improve. So that was me with regards to the session today. Before we go on to questions, I would like to again say, please stay home, please stay safe, wear a mask, wash your hands, keep social distancing, and thank you. Remember, as a coach, you will impact more people in a year than any of us do in a lifetime. Let's go to questions.
Yeah, Nikhil, we'll get to questions. If do you want to keep sharing your screen to come back to those slides in the questions, or would you like to get into normal screen mode?
Yeah.
Okay. So while we are waiting for Partha to come in.
No, I'm here. I'm back.
All right, great.
I think you can start, Monal sir. I'll just take a few minutes.
Okay. So there were a few questions which had come in while you were speaking. Pull up the chat mode. But yeah. So Nikhil, there's somebody who's asking what is the best time to take the lactate measurement?
So lactate measurement has to be done quite frequently. So say for example, if you want to know कि आपका वार्म अप इफेक्टिव है या नहीं, तो आप वार्म अप के बाद एक बार टेस्ट करके देख सकते हो. So then you know as a coach कि if I ask my athlete to warm up with this set, he's correctly warmed up. Similarly, आप कोई heavy session कराते हो, sprint sessions वगैरह, तो उसके बाद यू कैन चेक अ लैक्टेट टू नो कि आपने बॉडी को कितना पुश किया, एंड यू कैन चेक आफ्टर द रेस्ट पॉज टू नो कि आपका बॉडी कितना रिकवर किया. सो इट्स द वे यू चेक हार्ट रेट टू सी कि कितना पुश किया, कितना रिकवर किया, because the better your body can handle lactate and get rid of it, the harder you can train your athlete. So regularly checking it is the key, which is why I said it becomes quite expensive. लेकिन अगर आप सेम एथलीट्स को ट्रेन कर रहे हो इन अ फ्यू डेज टाइम, एज अ कोच अगर आप सब नोट कर रहे हो कि कौन से सेट के बाद कितना लैक्टेट था, कितना मिनट रिकवरी के बाद कितना लैक्टेट था, you will be able to understand that how the person responds to exercise and how he recovers, and then you don't need to do so many lactate measurements. आपको एक अंदाजा आ जाता है कि अगर मैं इतना पुश करूं तो एथलीट इतना थक जाएगा.
Thank you, Nikhil. I assume that would have well explained and solved the query. We have a question on RPE.
Yes.
And there's another sub question to it. How to measure RPE, and should it be done at the end of the session or within the session after sets?
So again, जैसे आप हार्ट रेट या लैक्टेट चेक करते हो, वैसे आरपीई आप बार बार चेक कर सकते हो. और आरपीई चेक करने के लिए ऑल यू हैव टू डू इज, आपके स्विमर ने एक सेट फिनिश किया, उसको आप पूछिए कैसा लगा सेट के बाद. अगर वो कहता है आसान था, इजी था, तो ठीक है, वो नंबर आप अपने डायरी में नोट कीजिए. वो कहता है कि नहीं काफी मुश्किल था, तो वो आप डायरी में नोट कीजिए. जैसे वो टेबल मैंने दिखाया, if the person says it's hard, then on the 1 to 10 scale it's usually around 6 or 7. If this person says it's light, then it's usually around 2 or 3. तो वो नंबर आप नोट कर सकते हो. फिर at the end of the rest pause भी आप पूछ सकते हो. So you can, it's just about asking how did you feel. So you can ask that as many times as you want, and it will allow you to accurately track कि हर सेट के बाद या रेस्ट पॉज के बाद बॉडी कैसे रिस्पॉन्ड किया उसको.
One of the question is, can you, a few of the coaches have asked this, can you highlight a recovery plan for swimmers between heat and final? Generally, we end up our heat around, before afternoon, so before noon, or sometime it's afternoon, and our final generally start in the late afternoon.
So you have around 4 hours in between.
You could say, yeah, we have around 4 hours in
So
between.
let's assume you have 4 hours in between. तो जैसे आपका heat खत्म होता है, you need to do a good cool down in the pool, come out, do some stretching. Once you have stretched out, you can change and you can have your food, proper food, जैसे lunch या dinner, proper heavy food, and then you need to rest or sleep for at least an hour and a half. Okay, so in 1 hour you have done your cool downs, your stretching and your food. Another 1.5 hour you have slept or rested, that's around 2.5 hours, and then you still have 1.5 hour left for your final, so you can start getting ready. Make sure you do a good warm up and be ready for your finals.
Thank you so much, because a lot of coaches, they need to know this.
Yes.
There's some query regarding swimmer shoulder.
Oh, sorry. Sub question.
Sorry, sir.
I'll jump in with a sub question to this, because
Please.
A lot of junior age group coaches are here, and they and the parents face an issue in our nationals or our championships, especially for the age group. It is sub junior and juniors together. So the morning heats are a pretty long session, 9 o'clock, some people have done their heats, but the final session gets over by almost noon, as Partha mentioned. So there is a good 3-hour gap. They have to wait sitting around before they can get access to the pool, because there's no separate cool down pool or a warm up pool at times at some venues. So how do you recommend the coaches can handle this type of a situation?
So this kind of a situation has to be dealt with in training. Let me explain. So अगर आप कंपटीशन में जाके सोचते हो कि हाँ ठीक है पूल नहीं है तो लैंड पे कुछ कर लेते हैं, it won't work. लेकिन if you train for it, जैसे normal training में भी you have a warm up session in the pool, but you also practice how to warm up on land. Then that will benefit when you go to when you go to these competitions. कि competition में अगर pool का access नहीं है तो you and your body will already know क्या करना है to warm it up properly before the competition starts. So is it best? Is it ideal? Is it perfect? No. But something is better than nothing. And remember कि ये problem सिर्फ आपको नहीं होगा, ये problem every competitor has to face this. So if you are able to warm up well in the outside the pool on land, then you will have a slight advantage over your competitors who are not used to it. Lekin everyone faces the same problem. So in your training session, try to include some warm-up exercises that you do on land before you enter the pool.
Makes sense. In swimming, one of the major injuries is swimmer's shoulder, as you know. So would you like to highlight, because some coaches are asking this, so would you like to highlight a bit of swimmer's shoulder injury and how they are supposed to prevent it?
Okay, now first you have to understand that shoulder is the most mobile joint in the body. जितना movement shoulder joint का है और किसी joint का नहीं है. Okay, I'll tell you why. Okay, once you understand the why, you'll know what to do about it. आपका hip joint है ना, looks like this. Okay, it's a ball which fits inside a socket. That is how your hip joint looks. Now your shoulder joint is also a ball and socket joint. But जो socket है वो इतना बड़ा नहीं है, it's just that much. Okay, because it's only that much, it can move a lot, लेकिन there is always a chance that it will move too much, क्योंकि उसको ठीक तरह से पकड़ा नहीं है. So in your shoulder, this stability is done by your muscles, your rotator cuff muscles. तो अगर आपके training session में, strengthening session में, ये rotator cuff muscles का movement अगर नहीं है, आप उसको training नहीं दे रहे, then you end up with a shoulder which is not properly controlled and you end up with injuries. The second thing is, most people work on mirror muscles. मतलब आप आईने के सामने खड़े रहते हो, तो जो बॉडी आपको दिखता है उस पे स्ट्रेंथनिंग होता है और पीछे वाले पे स्ट्रेंथनिंग नहीं होता. So quite a few swimmers end up with a slouched posture, especially breaststrokers, क्योंकि उनका हाथ पूल पानी के बाहर आता ही नहीं. So they don't have to do this movement. So breaststrokers are always slightly slouched. So here's what I want you guys to do. Everyone who's seeing me right now, I want you to slouch. Can every one of you slouch, please? Right? So once you have slouched, try to lift one of your hands up. When you're slouched, lift your hand up. Okay? Bring it down. Now go broad chested. And now try to lift the hand up. And what you will find is that when you're broad chested, the shoulder range is better, the movement is better, and that is because आपका shoulder का position is correct. So when you're slouched, your shoulders are slightly rotated inward, जिसकी वजह से यहाँ सामने काफी pinching होता है और जो पीछे से muscles सामने आते हैं to support the shoulder, वो खिंच जाते हैं. And that is one of the major reasons for swimmer's shoulder. So if you do strengthening for the upper back so that your body remains in a good posture, and you do strengthening for the rotator cuff muscles so they hold the shoulder joint steady, then that has been shown to reduce the impact or reduce swimmer's shoulder.
Thank you, Nikhil. Monal sir, would you like to highlight a few questions?
Yeah, I have jotted down quite a few, but I'll start with this one. 12 to 14-year-old who is doing a 3000 workout at an intensity level would be say 9 out of 10 or 30 BBM for 30 minutes.
Okay.
On what heart rate should be the recovery and for how long? Do you get the question?
So the heart rate should come down to under 140 and you have to match the recovery to that. So if you're checking heart rate regularly, check the heart rate immediately post the session and wait for it to come down to under 140.
Okay. There are some questions on static stretching after swimming, and also a connected question which says recent studies have shown that stretching can impact the strength, especially for sprinters. So what type of stretch and when is it best?
So you need to do static stretching as part of your cool down on land. And the reason I say that stretching is important is because in the human body, motion is motion. So the better you're able to move, the more resources your body has to find a way around a problem. So if you're not, and the question about stretching impacting sprinters, that will only happen if you increase the stretch, as in increase the range of motion of particular joints, but you're not working on the stability muscles to control that movement. So say for example, if your car is a Ferrari which can go at 300 kilometers per hour, but it has got the brakes of a Maruti 800, that's not going to work. You can't go at 300 kilometers per hour then because you won't be able to control the speed. So if you're increasing the mobility, which you should because it avoids injuries, then you also need to strengthen the supportive muscles to control that increased range. If you're able to do that, balance the stretch with the strength, you're all good.
Okay. And the last one before I hand it over to Partha for the next three. In swimming, there are multiple events in a session, and sometimes the events can be back to back or with a 15-20 minute gap between two events. So how do you recommend a recovery for
if in such cases where the events are back to back, if you have access to a cool down pool, then of course you can keep yourself, you can cool down a bit, keep yourself warmed up, keep going at the mild intensity. If there is no cool down pool available, then as soon as an event ends and the next one is in 20 minutes, you need to come out, you need to stretch, and you need to keep all your important joints like the shoulders, the knees, the hips, the back mobile. Don't allow your body to fully cool down. That is very important because if you cool down completely, then it takes a longer time to warm up. So you have to go from fifth gear to third gear, but not below that, so that you can quickly go from third to fifth again.
Right. I am coming to the recovery part. There are a few questions, and one of the question is, what are your thought on pranayam? Does it help for faster recovery? And the other thing is for age group swimmers who are training for about 2 hours, how much recovery do you think they should be, how much recovery time they should be spending, either in water or outside the water? So I'm just putting two questions together.
Yeah, I'll answer the first one regarding pranayam. Pranayam is an excellent modality to help your lungs and your breathing muscles recover and for oxygenation of the body, etc. But it adds only a few small percentage points to your recovery. So if your vitamin D levels are low, if you're not sleeping well, then just doing pranayam will not help you much. But if you're doing everything, then a little bit of pranayam may add a small percentage point. The second question for 12-year-olds who are training 2 hours a day, how much time should they spend in recovery? It depends on how hard you push them. So for example, if you're building up to a competition and you're training really hard for 2 hours, then you definitely need to ensure that they sleep for 8 to 9 hours. And you need to make sure that they are doing proper warm-ups, proper cool downs, they're eating well. If you're not training them that hard, then they still need about 8 hours of sleep and they need to eat well and sleep well. So those basics don't change much. You still need to eat well and sleep well, no matter what level you are.
there's an interesting question, and probably like I think it will come in the nutrition part. But again, what kind of water should be provided during practice? Or would you like to highlight about how much water you're supposed to consume during the practice?
So the best way to know how much water
I-
you need is by checking your weight. So for example, if you put a weighing scale in the washroom, strip off completely, check your weight, then go for your swimming session. Okay. Don't take any water during the swimming session. Come out, towel yourself off, go to the washroom, strip off, check your weight. Then you know that how much you have sweated. So say for example, you check your weight before training, you check your weight after training. Okay. And you know how much weight loss there has been. That weight loss is because of sweating. Okay. Because you haven't gone to the loo and you've not consumed any water. So whatever weight loss is there is because of sweating. So if you have lost half a kilo in half an hour, then you need at least 750 ml of water every half an hour. So whatever your weight loss is, about 150 ml to 200 ml more than that.
Yeah, that's a good explanation. I think they will understand.
This is
Regarding
during training, but I've found quite a few athletes who are good with drinking water during training and bad for the rest of the day. So even that shouldn't happen.
thank you so much. Regarding the content in the water, I think nutrition part will confirm that. So would you like to highlight few questions, Monal sir?
Yeah, this is actually not a question, but it is coming from a coach I know, and I'm very surprised with this question. So I think he should be a little more enlightened by Nikhil. The coach is saying event day warm-up is not good. It will affect performance. Would you like to kind of enlighten this gentleman?
Okay, I'll give an analogy. So when you start your car, you don't start in the fifth gear. You always start in first gear and slowly take it up. Similarly, in an event, you want the body to work in fifth gear. You can't snap your fingers and start the body in fifth gear. So a little bit of warm up is necessary to take the body at least to third gear so that it is a little bit warmed up, and then you can jump to fifth gear in the actual event. But a little bit of warm up is required. Otherwise, it's similar to starting your car in fifth gear. It doesn't work that way.
I totally agree with you. I think warm up is a vital part. Yes, of course, it depends on the swimmer and the capacity, and of course the event they are trying for. But in my
And what
view,
you call a warm-up?
It depends on what you
Yeah.
call the warm up. Yes.
There is some questions on Epsom salts and uses and benefits.
So again, I'm not the best person to answer that. But if you're talking about Epsom salts put in water in a hot tub and whether that benefits or not, yes, it does. But it works the same way as steam or sauna or a hot pack works. So it should not be done immediately after training. Immediately after training, icing works better. But once your body has fully cooled down, you've had a bath, you've had a little bit of food and sleep. After that, if you sit in a warm tub with Epsom salts, it does help.
this question is coming from one of our premier swimmer, Mr. Vidyaval Khare. So this is his question. In India, I have seen most swimmers doing just easy swimming after a massage. Most of the Western swimmers swim even lactic tolerance set after a recovery massage. What would you suggest swimmers do after a massage? Swim the
depends.
workout as the coach has planned, or just do easy swimming?
So it in a way depends on what kind of massage you do. So if it was a deep tissue massage or a sports massage where the masher has really gone in deep with the thumb to release all the knots in your muscles, it ends up causing a lot of pain and soreness, in which case an easy swim is better. But like I said, I'm never a fan of deep tissue massages. I prefer Swedish massage or spa type, nice relaxing massages more. If you've done that kind of a massage, you can stick to your coach's plan.
There's somebody who's asking about blood lactate versus muscle lactate testing. Can you explain the correlation? And is blood lactate sufficient enough to understand your muscle fatigue?
Yes, it is, but always remember there's a bit of a lag. Now, you can't actually go around doing muscle lactate testing because that would involve a biopsy needle where you have to put it into your muscle and then get a piece out and then check the lactate. No elite athlete will allow you to do that, and you shouldn't. So globally, when you check for lactate, it is checked either at the fingertip or at the earlobe, and that is blood lactate measurements. And there is a little bit of a gap between when the lactate is produced in the muscle to when it is sampled in the finger. It's about 2-3 minutes ka lag. So as long as you're aware of that, you can very well track the exercise intensity, and most importantly, how well your body gets rid of the lactate. How much lactate can it tolerate? How well your muscles get rid of the lactate? Because the faster your muscles can get rid of the lactate, the harder and longer you can train.
This is regarding massage, and I think we need to clear the coaches about the massage and recovery, because I got a question where coach is asking 10-12 years old swimmer getting massage every week, will it help?
Massages help, yes, but for a 10 to 12-year-old with the kind of training load they are under, every week seems too much. I would say once a month is enough. Because I'll explain myself why I'm saying once a month is enough. Because at that age group, 10 to 12, 16 age group, you're hitting your pubertal growth spurt. So everything is changing. Your bones are getting longer, muscles are getting longer. Your body is under a lot of stress to keep up with the changing body. And at that point, when the muscles are already tired, one, you can't push them as hard as you would a 17-year-old. And therefore, the best way to recover from it is to sleep 9 hours a day. Massages can be done once a month because the muscles are already under a lot of pressure to take care of a body that is growing longer. So yeah, don't push it too
hard. There's a question on gym sessions, and the question goes that swimmers do heavy gym session, and after gym session immediately swimmers have their swim session. So what is the best method to prevent it? I believe in one of our previous sessions, one of the speakers and experts, I don't remember who, had specifically mentioned that gym sessions should be after a swim session, and your views on that. And I would like the coaches to pay attention to what your experts are saying, because this point was very clearly mentioned by one of the previous speakers that gym sessions, if any, should be after your swim sessions.
Yeah, they should be after, because in gym sessions, you're targeting specific muscles and you're overloading them to get the training benefits. So if your muscles are already overloaded and tired, and then you enter the pool, then there's a greater chance that they are not going to do their job well and you end up with injuries. Whereas after a swim session, you go for a gym session where you're targeting specific muscles, that is still okay. Like for example, the rotator cuff muscles I mentioned, if you've strengthened them a lot and then you enter the pool, they're already tired, they're not going to support the shoulder well, and you can end up with injuries. So gym sessions should be done after the swim session.
Partha, shall I take one?
Yes, sir. Sure.
Okay, so these days with a lot of YouTube and technology, you can see practices around the globe, and athletes use cupping. Now, there's somebody who's asking your thoughts on cupping.
It's cute. So Cupping is another way to relieve pain, and it works primarily on the pain get mechanism. That is a thing we deal with in physiotherapy, but it is no better than, I mean, or let's say getting a proper massage is much better than cupping. I think cupping became quite famous once Michael Phelps showed it off on the TV screens during the Rio Games. Um, but yeah, the first time I saw cupping was in 2009. So it's been around for quite a while, and it's got its limited uses. So it's cute.
One other question is, do you refer hot packs in winter instead of icing, even during competition?
For recovery,
Yes.
so if it's winter and you're in between events and you don't have access to the pool and it's cold outside, then yes, hot packs are better to keep your body warm. That would work like passive warm up to make sure your body is warm, so that you can perform well between in consecutive events. But in terms of recovery after training, if the water is already cold, you can skip the icing part, directly go to stretching and cool down in the water. But I don't recommend heat immediately as soon as you come out of the pool.
Sometimes swimmers do back-to-back event and they hardly have about 10 to 20 minutes time between two events. Do you have any special suggestion for recovery?
Stay warm. So if you just have 15 minutes between events, you can't allow your body to cool down. So as soon as your event is done and you're in 5th gear, bring it down to 3rd gear, but that's it. Don't sleep around, don't rest around, don't see your mobile phones, keep doing your stretches, keep your body active, because you can't allow your body to cool down too much.
I suppose that would apply to, again, the scenario we discussed earlier. You've done your warm-up swims, but then your event is pretty late in the day. So you've done your warm-up swim around 9 o'clock before the morning session starts. And then your actual event is somewhere around noon. So you have a big gap of couple of hours between your warm-up and your event.
No, sir. So if you know for certain that your event is going to be after a couple of hours, because I believe the schedules are already put up for the day,
Yeah.
then doing a warm up at 9 o'clock makes no sense, because you can't keep your body warmed up for 3 hours. I would rather you spend that time sleeping, and 1 hour before your event, you start getting active, start doing your dynamic stretches, start warming your body on land, so that about 15 minutes before the event, you're fully warmed up.
Yeah, but then you don't have access to a separate warm-up pool. So then you have to get used to a dry land.
But that is the same for everyone. Yeah, and that is the same for everyone. So unless somebody else has done one event and then come back for the next event, if it's the same heat for the same set of swimmers, everyone's in the same boat. So whoever has warmed up at 9 o'clock is still going to have properly, well and truly cooled down. So instead, at 9 o'clock, you can have a hearty breakfast, rest a bit, sleep a bit. And if your event is at 12, start warming up at 11. Start with some stretching, start with some spot jogging or jumping jacks or burpees or something like that. Get the blood flowing through the body so that at 11:45, you're fully warmed up and ready to swim.
Thank you, Nikhil. Parthai, can you spot a question which has not been addressed?
I can spot few, but these are not very relevant to our topic today. So I'm just trying to see, what. Oh, there are a few repeats, I guess.
I would like you to take this one, because I see we have some really diverse practices in recovery management. Do you recommend needles for age group swimmers?
Yeah, that's a nice question.
It depends on what the issue is. So I've had young athletes as young as 7 years come to me with some issues where I've had to use dry needling on them. But that's more of a therapy, and it needs to be done by trained physiotherapists and only when it is required. So dry needling itself is not a problem, but it needs to be done by a specialist, and if there is a
Partha, we are approaching the outer limit. Maybe one or two questions if you can spot relevant questions.
Yeah, I just like to highlight one thing, I guess. I've seen a lot of cases, kids, I mean, just a real life story. In a lot of cases, kids try to go to a physiotherapist for pain relief without understanding the fact that what phase of the progression or what phase of the training phase they are in. So suppose they're in the overloading phase where their body is supposed to overcome the load by itself, and they tend to uh, go and take some immediate support, which rather, the system would want them to recover by itself. So would you like to highlight some of it?
So what I would suggest is pay attention to the intensity of pain. So if the child describes the pain as mild to moderate, you don't need to see a physio. But if it is severe pain, then the overload was more than what the body can catch up to. And then you do need to see someone. Mild to moderate pain with sleep and with the recovery techniques that we discussed today, you should be able to control it and your body will adapt. But if it is severe pain, then you've gone beyond what your body can adapt to. And then you need to see someone.
There is somebody who, because of injury, has not been able to practice sport for a long time, and he has a specific issue of patellar tendonitis. Any exercises?
First we need to figure out why there's patellar tendonitis. Is it because that side is weaker and therefore it's overloaded, or is that side stronger and therefore it is taking more load? Is he in the growing age group, in which case it could be something more severe like patellar tendonitis leading to the pain and injury along the tibial tuberosity. So we need to see exactly what's the cause, especially if it's going on for a very long time. And so I would recommend that if you could see a physio, maybe once the lockdown is open, and get a diagnosis. If you get a diagnosis, then it will be better to handle.
Address these issues. But coaches have to be conscious. The reason why I took this, that coaches have to be conscious about what their athletes are feeling and to recommend a consultation with a knowledgeable physio as deemed necessary.
Yeah.
There are many questions on specific problems which or exercises which I'm sure the strength and conditioning coach will, the presenter will take care of those questions, Partha.
Yeah, there are a few questions which relates to nutritionist
recovery. I'm not able to spot anything new. So should we call it a wrap?
Yeah, I think so. Just one question just pop up, and I think this can be the last question of the day. Which type of sleep is better, single or twice a day?
Single is better, but I'll take what I can get. I mean, getting the number of hours of sleep is more important rather than saying I can only sleep 6 hours at night and I won't sleep in the afternoon. Sleep in the afternoon. Get the required hours of sleep. That is more important. But getting it in one single stretch is better.
Partha,
I think we can conclude today, sir.
Partha, can you take that one from Nirup? Can you please tell about the importance of neural recovery, how to do it, and how often to do it?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Can you please tell about the importance of neural recovery, how to do it, and how often will we have to do?
So, neural recovery, as in for the brain and nerves. For the nerves, you need to make sure your vitamin B12 levels are okay. For the brain, you just need to consume carbohydrates in your diet. And if you want to get over fatigue of the brain and nerves, you need to sleep. That's it. Nothing else is required. Your brain isn't like a muscle which undergoes wear and tear.